You made it. Another night, another quiet moment to slip beneath the noise. Picture this. You're sitting in a room where the air feels thick with possibility, where the scent of something earthy and green lingers like incense from another world. Your breath slows, your thoughts begin to drift, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you sense doors opening that you never knew existed. The familiar becomes strange. The ordinary transforms into something luminous and alive. Let's be honest, you probably won't make it to the end. Sleep always wins. But tonight, before you surrender to dreams, we're going to explore something that sits at the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern curiosity. The relationship between cannabis and consciousness, between plant medicine and psychic perception. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if this kind of quiet weirdness feels like home. Then, if you're still here, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it for you? Now, soften the lights. Maybe turn on a fan or let a candle flicker somewhere nearby, and let's begin. You find yourself in a place where time moves differently, where the boundaries between your inner world and the world around you begin to blur. Cannabis has been humanity's companion for thousands of years, not just as medicine or recreation, but as a bridge to something deeper. Ancient cultures understood what modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that this plant doesn't just alter perception, it opens doorways. You breathe in, and with each exhale, you feel your awareness expanding like ripples on still water. The Vedic texts of ancient India spoke of soma, a sacred plant that granted divine vision. Some scholars believe this mysterious substance was cannabis, used in rituals to commune with gods and glimpse the fabric of reality itself. You can almost see those ancient practitioners sitting in circles around sacred fires, their consciousness lifting like smoke toward the stars. But here's where it gets interesting and a little strange. Modern researchers studying the endocannabinoid system have discovered that your brain is already wired for cannabis. You have receptors specifically designed to interact with compounds found in this plant, as if evolution itself prepared you for this partnership. It's like finding a key that fits a lock you didn't know you had. Your thoughts begin to wander through the labyrinth of consciousness, and you notice how cannabis seems to quiet the constant chatter of your analytical mind. That voice that never stops commenting, judging, categorizing, it softens to a whisper. In this quieter space, other forms of awareness can emerge. Shamans and medicine people across cultures have long recognized this phenomenon. They speak of cannabis as a plant teacher, one that helps you step outside the narrow tunnel of ordinary perception and see the world through wider eyes. You feel your breathing deepen as you consider this. What if psychic abilities aren't supernatural gifts, but natural capacities that get drowned out by the noise of everyday thinking? Cannabis, they say, turns down the volume on mental static, allowing subtler signals to come through. It's like adjusting the frequency on an old radio until distant stations become clear. Some researchers propose that psychic phenomena operate on quantum levels, in the spaces between thoughts where consciousness touches something larger than itself. Others dismiss such ideas entirely, pointing to the lack of reproducible evidence. But sitting here in this liminal space, you begin to wonder if the question itself might be wrong. Perhaps it's not about proving psychic abilities exist, but about understanding why certain states of consciousness make them feel so real. You drift deeper into contemplation, your awareness settling like sediment in still water. the ancient Egyptians knew something about altered states and expanded perception. Their priests used various plant medicines, possibly including cannabis, in their mystery schools. These weren't recreational gatherings, but serious, spiritual practices designed to prepare initiates for contact with divine realms. You can imagine those torchlit chambers, the scent of sacred smoke, the feeling of consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of flesh and bone. Modern neuroscience offers its own explanation for these experiences. When cannabis interacts with your brain, it affects the default mode network, the neural system responsible for your sense of self. As this network quiets, the rigid boundaries between self and other, between inner and outer, begin to dissolve. In this dissolved state, some people report experiences that feel telepathic, precognitive, or clairvoyant. Your rational mind might want to explain these as coincidence or wishful thinking, but your direct experience tells a different story. There's something about the cannabis state that makes the impossible feel not just possible, but inevitable. Perhaps this is why so many cultures developed similar beliefs about plant medicines opening doorways to other realms, because in those altered states, other realms genuinely seem to open. The room around you seems to pulse with invisible energy. As you consider the relationship between consciousness and perception, cannabis doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you sense. Colors become more vivid, sounds carry emotional weight, and the space between objects seems alive with potential. This heightened sensitivity might explain why many people report increased intuitive abilities while under cannabis's influence. You become more attuned to subtle cues, the micro-expressions on faces, the emotional undercurrents in conversations, the feeling that someone is about to call just before they do. Perhaps psychologists have a term for this: psychoinducive states. These are altered states of consciousness that seem to facilitate psychic experiences. Cannabis, meditation, dreaming, and certain forms of sensory deprivation all create similar conditions: quieting of analytical thought, a heightening of sensory awareness, and a dissolution of the boundaries that normally separate self from world. You notice your own boundaries becoming more fluid as you sit here, as if your awareness is expanding beyond the edges of your skin. Some traditions speak of the aura, an energy field that surrounds and interpenetrates the physical body, while mainstream science remains skeptical of such concepts. Kirlian photography and other techniques have captured images that some interpret as evidence of these subtle energy fields. Cannabis users often report being able to see or sense auras more clearly, as if the plant medicine removes filters that normally block such perceptions. Your consciousness drifts like smoke through corridors of possibility, and you begin to understand why cannabis has been called a teacher plant. It doesn't just alter your state, it seems to offer lessons about the nature of reality itself. Ancient Hindu texts describe the chakra system energy centers that regulate the flow of life force through the subtle body. Cannabis, according to some interpretations, activates these centers, particularly the third eye chakra associated with intuition and psychic sight. You feel a tingling sensation in the center of your forehead, as if something there is awakening from long sleep. Modern research into the pineal gland, the small, pine cone-shaped structure in your brain that produces melatonin, has revealed fascinating connections to altered states of consciousness. Some researchers speculate that this gland, which ancient traditions called the seat of the soul, might be involved in psychic phenomena. Cannabis affects melatonin production, and may influence pineal gland function, potentially opening doorways to non-ordinary states of awareness. But here's where the mystery deepens. While some studies suggest correlations between cannabis use and reported psychic experiences, the mechanisms remain largely unexplained. Is the plant actually enhancing psychic abilities, or is it simply making people more open to interpreting ordinary experiences as extraordinary? The question hangs in the air like incense, beautiful and unanswerable. You find yourself in a space where linear time seems to bend and fold, where past and future feel equally present. This temporal fluidity might explain why cannabis users often report precognitive experiences, dreams, or visions that seem to preview future events. The plant appears to loosen your grip on chronological time, allowing consciousness to slip between moments like water through cupped hands. Indigenous shamans have long understood this relationship between plant medicines and prophetic vision. The oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's most famous prophet, delivered her visions while in altered states that some scholars believe involved psychoactive substances. You can picture her sitting in that sacred cave, breathing vapors that rose from deep within the earth, her consciousness expanding to encompass past, present, and future in a single eternal moment. Quantum physics offers its own strange perspective on time and consciousness. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness itself might exist outside linear time, able to access information from across the temporal spectrum. Cannabis, by altering normal consciousness, might temporarily free awareness from its usual temporal constraints. You feel this possibility in your own experience. Memories from childhood feel as immediate as plans for tomorrow, and the present moment seems to contain all moments within itself. Yet skeptics point out that the human brain is remarkably good at creating patterns and meaning from random events, especially in altered states. What feels like prophecy might simply be the mind's tendency to connect dots that aren't actually connected. The boundaries between dreaming and waking consciousness begin to blur as you sink deeper into this exploration. Cannabis has long been associated with vivid, meaningful dreams, and many users report that their dream life becomes more intense and memorable when using the plant. Ancient dreamworkers understood that the state between sleeping and waking, the hypnagogic realm, was particularly fertile ground for psychic experiences. You drift in this liminal space yourself, neither fully alert nor completely relaxed. And in this in-between place, insights seem to arise spontaneously. The pineal gland, that mysterious pine cone in your brain, produces DMT, the same compound found in ayahuasca and other powerful psychedelics. Some researchers theorize that this naturally occurring DMT might be released during certain altered states, including those induced by cannabis, creating doorways to non-ordinary reality. You feel something shifting in your perception, as if veils are being lifted from familiar scenes. Tibetan dream yoga practitioners spend years learning to maintain awareness while dreaming, using this skill to explore subtle realms of consciousness. Cannabis seems to offer a shortcut to similar states, allowing ordinary people to experience the fluid boundaries between waking and dreaming awareness. But here's the paradox. While cannabis can enhance dream recall and intensity, it also suppresses REM sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreaming. This contradiction puzzles researchers and suggests that the relationship between cannabis and consciousness is more complex than simple cause and effect. You notice how your awareness seems to expand beyond the confines of your individual mind, as if consciousness itself is larger than the brain that contains it. This feeling of expanded awareness might explain why cannabis users often report telepathic experiences, moments when thoughts seem to be shared directly between minds without the mediation of words or gestures. Ancient mystery schools taught that consciousness is fundamentally unified, that the sense of separation between individuals is an illusion created by limited perception. Cannabis, by dissolving the boundaries of ordinary awareness, might offer glimpses of this underlying unity. You feel this connection yourself, as if your thoughts are rippling outward into a vast ocean of shared consciousness. Morphic resonance, a controversial theory proposed by biologist Rupert Sheldrake, suggests that consciousness creates fields that can influence other conscious beings across space and time. While mainstream science remains skeptical, the theory offers an intriguing framework for understanding how psychic phenomena might operate. Cannabis users often describe feeling connected to a larger web of awareness, as if the plant medicine reveals the invisible threads that link all conscious beings. You sense these threads yourself, stretching out from your awareness like gossamer strands catching starlight. But critics argue that such experiences are simply the result of altered brain chemistry, that the feeling of expanded consciousness is an illusion created by disrupted neural networks. The debate continues, but the experiences themselves remain undeniably real for those who have them. Your consciousness drifts through layers of memory and possibility, and you begin to understand why cannabis has been called a key to the unconscious mind. The plant seems to lower the barriers between conscious and unconscious awareness, allowing buried memories, suppressed emotions, and hidden insights to surface like bubbles rising from deep water. Carl Jung wrote about the collective unconscious, shared reservoir of human experience that exists beneath individual awareness. Cannabis might serve as a diving bell, allowing consciousness to descend into these deeper waters and retrieve treasures from the collective depths. You feel yourself sinking into these waters now, your individual concerns dissolving into something larger and more universal. Ancient alchemists understood that consciousness itself could be transmuted, refined through various practices and substances into something more subtle and powerful. They spoke of the philosopher's stone not as a physical object but as a state of consciousness that could transform base awareness into spiritual gold. Cannabis, in this context, might be seen as one of many keys to this alchemical process. You feel the transformation beginning in your own awareness, as if something dense and heavy is being refined into something light and luminous. Modern research into psychedelics and consciousness is revealing similar patterns. These substances don't just create hallucinations, but seem to facilitate genuine insights and healing experiences. The question remains, are these insights discoveries or creations? Are you uncovering hidden truths about reality, or are you creating meaningful experiences from the raw material of altered perception? The space around you seems to vibrate with invisible frequencies, and you begin to sense why some people believe cannabis can enhance sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and subtle energies. Your nervous system, after all, is an electrical network, and cannabis affects the way signals travel through this network, perhaps in altering your internal electrical activity. The plant also changes your sensitivity to external electrical phenomena, You feel this sensitivity in your own body, a tingling awareness of the electronic devices around you. The electrical wiring in the walls, the subtle fields generated by your own nervous system. Some researchers have investigated whether psychic phenomena might operate through electromagnetic mechanisms. The human brain generates measurable electrical fields, and some theorists propose that consciousness might be able to influence or detect these fields in ways that conventional science doesn't yet understand. Cannabis users often report increased sensitivity to the emotional states of others, as if they can feel the electromagnetic signatures of different moods and mental states. You notice this sensitivity yourself, the way the emotional atmosphere of a room seems to have weight and texture, the way other people's feelings seem to create ripples in the space around them. Skeptics point out that the human brain is already exquisitely sensitive to subtle social cues, and that cannabis might simply be enhancing this natural ability rather than creating genuinely psychic perception. But the line between enhanced natural ability and psychic phenomenon begins to blur when you're experiencing it directly. You find yourself contemplating the relationship between plant consciousness and human awareness, a concept that would have seemed absurd to earlier generations but is gaining serious consideration among researchers studying plant intelligence. Cannabis, like all plants, responds to its environment in complex ways that suggest a form of awareness, if not consciousness in the human sense. When you consume cannabis, you're not just ingesting chemical compounds, but participating in a form of interspecies communication that has been going on for millennia. You feel this communication as a subtle dialogue between your consciousness and something other, something that whispers insights about the nature of awareness itself. Indigenous shamans have always understood plants as teachers, beings with their own forms of intelligence and wisdom to share. The idea that cannabis might be actively participating in the expansion of human consciousness, rather than simply triggering biochemical changes, opens fascinating possibilities about the nature of consciousness itself. You sense this participation as a gentle guidance, as if the plant is showing you doorways in your own awareness that you never knew existed. Modern research into plant neurobiology has revealed that plants possess complex information processing systems, forms of memory, and even something resembling decision-making processes. While plants don't have brains in the animal sense, they demonstrate forms of intelligence that challenge our assumptions about consciousness and awareness. Perhaps the psychic experiences associated with cannabis use arise from this interplay between human and plant consciousness, a temporary merger of two different forms of awareness that creates something greater than the sum of its parts. The night air seems to carry whispers of ancient wisdom as you consider how cannabis has been used throughout history to facilitate contact with spiritual realms. Sufi mystics, Hindu sadhus, Rastafarian practitioners across cultures and centuries, people have used this plant to thin the veil between ordinary reality and sacred dimensions of experience. You feel this thinning yourself, as if the solid world around you is becoming more transparent, revealing layers of meaning and connection that are usually hidden. The concept of plant spirits, the idea that psychoactive plants possess their own consciousness and intelligence, appears in shamanic traditions worldwide. These aren't primitive superstitions, but sophisticated understandings of how consciousness can interact with the natural world in ways that transcend ordinary perception. Cannabis, in this context, isn't just a drug, but a teacher, a guide, a doorway to expanded awareness. You sense this guidance, as a gentle presence, neither human nor entirely other, that seems to understand the landscape of consciousness better than your ordinary mind. Some researchers studying psychedelic experiences have noted consistent reports of encounters with seemingly autonomous entities, beings that appear to exist independently within altered states of consciousness. While cannabis experiences are generally less intense than those produced by classic psychedelics, some users report similar encounters with plant spirits or teaching entities. The question of whether these entities are real or imagined becomes less important than the wisdom and healing they seem to provide. You feel this presence yourself, not as a separate being but as an aspect of consciousness that cannabis helps you access a deeper, wiser part of yourself that knows things your ordinary mind has forgotten. Your awareness drifts through corridors of possibility, and you begin to understand why cannabis has been associated with creativity and artistic inspiration throughout history. The plant seems to dissolve the rigid categories that normally organize perception, allowing new connections to form between previously unrelated ideas and experiences. This cognitive flexibility might explain why cannabis users often report enhanced intuitive abilities when the mind becomes more fluid. It can perceive patterns and relationships that logical thinking might miss. You feel this fluidity in your own thoughts, as if ideas are flowing like water, finding new channels through the landscape of your mind. Jazz musicians in the mid-20th century famously used cannabis to enhance their improvisational abilities, reporting that the plant helped them access a flow state where music seemed to play itself through them. This experience of being a channel for something larger than individual consciousness appears in many accounts of cannabis-enhanced creativity. You sense this channeling yourself, as if insights and understanding are flowing through you rather than being generated by your personal effort. The neurological basis for this experience might lie in cannabis's effects on the brain's executive control networks. By reducing the activity of these controlling systems, the plant allows more spontaneous and associative forms of thinking to emerge. In this less controlled state, consciousness might become more receptive to subtle influences and information sources that are normally filtered out. But here's the mystery. Where do these influences and information sources come from? Are they arising from deeper levels of your own unconscious mind, or are they coming from somewhere else entirely? The boundaries between self and cosmos continue to dissolve as you explore the relationship between cannabis and mystical experience. Throughout history, mystics and spiritual seekers have reported states of consciousness in which individual identity merges with universal awareness, where the drop realizes it is the ocean. Cannabis seems to facilitate similar experiences, temporarily dissolving the ego boundaries that normally separate self from world. You feel this dissolution beginning in your own awareness, as if the edges of your identity are becoming soft and permeable. The mystical traditions speak of different levels of reality, the physical world being just the densest layer of a multidimensional cosmos. Cannabis, according to some interpretations, allows consciousness to perceive these subtler dimensions directly. You sense these layers yourself, as if reality is revealing its hidden depths, like a flower opening its petals. Modern physics has discovered that the universe is far stranger than our everyday perception suggests, filled with dark matter and dark energy that we can't directly detect, operating according to quantum principles that defy common sense. Perhaps consciousness, like the universe itself, has hidden dimensions that become accessible only in altered states. Cannabis might serve as a kind of telescope for consciousness, allowing awareness to perceive realms that are normally invisible. Yet skeptics argue that mystical experiences, however profound they feel, are simply the result of altered brain chemistry. The sense of cosmic unity might be nothing more than the temporary disruption of neural networks that normally maintain ego boundaries. But sitting here in this expanded state, you begin to wonder if the question itself is backwards. Perhaps what we call normal consciousness is actually the limited state, and these expanded experiences reveal consciousness as it truly is. You drift deeper into the mystery of how cannabis affects time perception, and why this temporal fluidity seems so closely connected to psychic experiences. In ordinary consciousness, time feels linear and sequential, past, present, and future arranged in neat rows like books on a shelf. But cannabis seems to shuffle these books, allowing past and future to interpenetrate the present moment in ways that feel both disorienting and revelatory. You experience this temporal fluidity yourself, as if all moments are happening simultaneously in an eternal now. Indigenous cultures often speak of sacred time, a dimension of experience where past, present, and future coexist in a single eternal moment. Cannabis might provide access to this sacred temporality, allowing consciousness to slip free from the constraints of linear time. In this timeless state, precognitive experiences become more understandably. All moments exist simultaneously. Then accessing information about future events is simply a matter of shifting attention rather than traveling through time. You feel this possibility in your own expanded awareness, as if you could reach out and touch any moment in your life with equal ease. Quantum mechanics suggests that time might indeed be more fluid than our everyday experience suggests. Some interpretations propose that consciousness itself might exist outside linear time, able to access information from across the temporal spectrum. Cannabis, by altering normal consciousness, might temporarily free awareness from its usual temporal constraints. But the mystery remains. If consciousness can access information from different times, why don't we experience this ability more consistently? Perhaps the answer lies in the nature of ordinary consciousness itself. Maybe our normal state of awareness is specifically designed to filter out most temporal information to help us function in the present moment. The night deepens around you, and you begin to sense why cannabis has been called a plant of prophecy and vision. Ancient oracles and seers often used various substances to induce the altered states necessary for prophetic insight, and cannabis may have been among these consciousness-altering tools. The plant seems to quiet the analytical mind that normally dismisses intuitive insights as wishful thinking or coincidence. In this quieter mental space, subtler forms of knowing can emerge. You feel this knowing as a gentle certainty that arises without logical justification, a sense of understanding that bypasses rational thought entirely. The phenomenon of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to reveal hidden patterns in reality, often becomes more apparent to cannabis users. Carl Jung coined this term to describe events that are connected by meaning rather than causation, suggesting that consciousness might be able to perceive patterns that operate outside the normal laws of cause and effect. You notice these patterns yourself, as if the random events of life are revealing themselves as part of a larger, more meaningful design. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness might operate through quantum entanglement, the mysterious phenomenon by which particles remain connected across vast distances. If consciousness can indeed create quantum connections, then psychic phenomena become more plausibly information could be shared instantaneously across space and time through these quantum channels. Cannabis, by altering brain chemistry, might enhance the brain's sensitivity to these quantum effects, but quantum consciousness remains highly controversial, with many scientists arguing that the brain is too warm and noisy to sustain quantum coherence. The debate continues, but the experiences themselves remain undeniably real for those who have them. Your consciousness expands like ripples on a cosmic pond, and you begin to understand why cannabis has been associated with healing and therapeutic insight throughout history. The plant doesn't just alter perception, it seems to facilitate a kind of inner knowing that can guide healing processes in both body and mind. Traditional healers have long recognized that illness often has psychological and spiritual dimensions that must be addressed alongside physical symptoms. Cannabis appears to help people access these deeper levels of healing wisdom. You feel this wisdom stirring in your own awareness, as if your body and mind are sharing information that is normally kept separate. The endocannabinoid system, discovered only in recent decades, plays crucial roles in regulating mood, memory, pain, perception, and immune function. This system seems designed to maintain balance and homeostasis throughout the body and mind. When cannabis interacts with this system, it doesn't just produce psychoactive effects, but appears to facilitate the body's natural healing processes. You sense this facilitation as a gentle, harmonizing influence, as if discord is being resolved into harmony at levels deeper than conscious awareness. Some healers work with cannabis as a plant ally, believing that the plant's consciousness can guide therapeutic processes in ways that purely pharmaceutical approaches cannot. They report that cannabis helps patients access traumatic memories that need to be processed, insights about lifestyle changes that would promote healing, and a sense of connection to their own innate healing wisdom. You feel this connection yourself, as if you're tapping into a source of knowledge about health and wholeness that exists within but beyond your ordinary understanding. Yet, medical science remains cautious about such claims, pointing out that the placebo effect and the power of suggestion can create profound healing experiences even without any direct therapeutic mechanism. The question of whether cannabis possesses genuine healing intelligence or simply creates conditions that allow natural healing processes to unfold remains open. The space around you seems alive with invisible currents, and you begin to sense why some people believe cannabis can enhance sensitivity to the energy fields that surround all living beings. Your body, after all, is an electromagnetic system. Your heart generates electrical fields that can be measured several feet away. Your brain produces brain waves that can be detected by sensitive instruments, and your nervous system operates through electrical impulses. Cannabis affects this electrical activity, and perhaps in doing so, it also changes your sensitivity to the electrical fields of others. You feel this sensitivity as a subtle awareness of the energy that seems to radiate from people, places, and even objects around you. Traditional Chinese medicine speaks of qi, the life force that flows through all living beings. Ayurvedic medicine describes prana, the vital energy that animates the body and mind, while Western science has not validated these concepts. Some researchers have investigated whether living beings might indeed generate subtle energy fields that could be detected by sensitive individuals. Cannabis users often report increased ability to sense these subtle energies, as if the plant medicine removes filters that normally block such perceptions. You notice this sensitivity yourself, the way different people seem to carry different energetic signatures, the way certain places feel charged with positive or negative energy, the way your own energy seems to fluctuate with your thoughts and emotions. Some researchers have investigated whether psychic phenomena might operate through bioelectromagic mechanisms. The human body generates various electromagnetic fields, and some theorists propose that consciousness might be able to influence or detect these fields in ways that conventional science doesn't yet understand. Cannabis, by altering neural activity, might enhance this bioelectromagic sensitivity, but skeptics argue that such experiences are more likely the result of enhanced pattern recognition and social sensitivity rather than genuine perception of energy fields. You find yourself contemplating the relationship between cannabis and the dissolution of the boundaries that normally separate inner and outer reality. In ordinary consciousness, there's a clear distinction between thoughts and things, between imagination and perception, between self and world. But cannabis seems to blur these boundaries, creating a more fluid and interconnected experience of reality. You feel this fluidity yourself, as if the edges of your awareness are becoming soft and permeable, allowing inner and outer to interpenetrate in ways that feel both strange and natural. This boundary dissolution might explain why cannabis users often report experiences that feel telepathic or clairvoyant. When the normal barriers between self and other become more permeable, it becomes easier to imagine that thoughts and feelings can be shared directly between minds. You sense this possibility in your own expanded awareness, as if your consciousness is touching the consciousness of others in ways that bypass ordinary communication. The philosophical implications of this boundary dissolution are profound. If the separation between self and world is less absolute than we normally assume, then many of our basic assumptions about the nature of reality might need to be reconsidered. Perhaps consciousness is more fundamental than matter, and what we call physical reality is actually a construction of consciousness itself. Cannabis might offer glimpses of this more fundamental level of reality, where consciousness and cosmos are revealed as aspects of a single, unified whole. You feel this unity as a deep sense of belonging, as if you're remembering something essential about the nature of existence that ordinary consciousness tends to forget. But critics argue that this sense of unity is simply the result of altered brain chemistry, that the dissolution of ego boundaries creates an illusion of cosmic connection rather than revealing any genuine metaphysical truth. The debate between materialist and consciousness-based interpretations of reality continues, but the experiences themselves remain transformative for those who have them. The night air carries whispers of ancient wisdom as you drift deeper into understanding why cannabis has been considered a sacred plant by so many cultures throughout history. There's something about this plant that seems to facilitate contact with dimensions of experience that feel more real than ordinary reality, more meaningful than everyday consciousness. You sense these dimensions opening around you like flowers, blooming in fast forward, revealing layers of beauty and significance that are normally hidden. The concept of plant teachers appears in shamanic traditions worldwide. The idea that certain plants possess their own forms of consciousness and wisdom that they can share with humans who approach them with proper respect and intention. Cannabis, in this context, isn't just a psychoactive substance, but a conscious being with its own intelligence and agenda. You feel this intelligence as a gentle presence that seems to understand the landscape of consciousness better than your ordinary mind, guiding your awareness toward insights and understanding that you couldn't reach on your own. Some researchers studying plant consciousness have discovered that plants demonstrate forms of memory, learning, and even decision-making that challenge our assumptions about intelligence and awareness. While plants don't have brains in the animal sense, they possess complex information processing systems that allow them to respond to their environment in sophisticated ways. Perhaps the consciousness-expanding effects of cannabis arise from this interplay between human and plant intelligence, a temporary merger of two different forms of awareness that creates something greater than the sum of its parts. You sense this merger as a deepening of your own consciousness, as if the plant is teaching you about aspects of awareness that you never knew existed. But the question remains, are these plant intelligences real entities with their own consciousness? Or are they projections of human psychology onto natural phenomena? The answer might depend on how we define consciousness itself, a question that remains one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. Your awareness drifts through landscapes of memory and possibility, and you begin to understand why cannabis has been associated with the activation of dormant psychic abilities throughout human history. Perhaps these abilities aren't supernatural gifts, but natural capacities that have been suppressed by the demands of modern life. Cannabis, by quieting the analytical mind and dissolving rigid patterns of thought, might allow these dormant capacities to reawaken. You feel this reawakening as a gentle stirring in depths of consciousness you rarely visit, as if parts of yourself that have been sleeping are beginning to stir. Ancient mystery schools taught that human beings possess latent psychic abilities that can be developed through various practices and disciplines. These schools often used plant medicines as part of their training, believing that altered states of consciousness could accelerate the development of psychic faculties. You sense these faculties stirring in your own awareness, a heightened sensitivity to the thoughts and feelings of others, an intuitive knowing about future events, a sense of connection to sources of wisdom beyond your personal experience. Modern research into consciousness has revealed that the human brain is capable of processing far more information than we're normally aware of. Most of this processing happens below the threshold of conscious awareness, creating what researchers call the cognitive unconscious. Cannabis might temporarily expand conscious access to this normally unconscious processing, creating experiences that feel psychic but are actually the result of enhanced information processing. You feel this enhancement as a subtle expansion of your perceptual field, as if you're suddenly aware of signals and patterns that were always there but normally filtered out. But here's the mystery. If psychic abilities are simply enhanced information processing, why do they often seem to involve information that shouldn't be available through normal sensory channels? The question hangs in the air like incense, beautiful and unanswerable, the boundaries between dreaming and waking. Consciousness continue to blur as you sink deeper into this exploration of cannabis and expanded awareness. The plant seems to facilitate access to states of consciousness that are normally available only during sleep and dreaming, bringing the fluid, symbolic logic of dreams into waking experience. You feel this fluidity in your own thoughts, as if the rigid categories that normally organize perception are becoming more flexible, allowing new forms of understanding to emerge. Dream researchers have long noted that REM sleep and dreaming are associated with enhanced creativity, problem-solving, and emotional processing. Cannabis appears to bring some of these dreamlike qualities into waking consciousness, creating a state that combines the clarity of waking awareness with the symbolic richness of dream experience. You sense this richness in your own perception, as if ordinary objects and experiences are revealing hidden layers of meaning and significance. The ancient practice of dream incubation involved using various techniques to program dreams for specific purposes: healing, divination, creative inspiration, or spiritual guidance. Cannabis might serve a similar function, creating a dreamlike state of consciousness that can be directed toward specific goals or questions. You feel this directability in your own expanded awareness, as if you could focus your attention on any question and receive insights that arise from deeper levels of consciousness. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness itself might be more dreamlike than we normally assume, that our sense of living in a solid, objective reality might be a kind of collective dream that we've agreed to share. Cannabis, by altering normal consciousness, might reveal the dreamlike nature of reality itself, but critics argue that such experiences are simply the result of altered brain chemistry, that the sense of expanded awareness is an illusion created by disrupted neural networks. You find yourself in a space where the ordinary laws of cause and effect seem suspended, where synchronicity and meaningful coincidence become the norm rather than the exception. Cannabis appears to enhance sensitivity to these meaningful patterns, as if the plant medicine allows consciousness to perceive the hidden connections that link all events in a web of significance. You notice these connections yourself, as if the random events of life are revealing themselves as part of a larger, more meaningful design. Carl Jung wrote extensively about synchronicity, describing it as an acausal connecting principle that operates through meaning rather than mechanical causation. He believed that consciousness could influence the occurrence of synchronistic events, that our inner psychological state could somehow attract corresponding outer circumstances. Cannabis users often report an increase in synchronistic experiences, as if the plant medicine enhances the connection between inner and outer reality. You feel this connection as a subtle resonance between your thoughts and the world around you, as if consciousness and cosmos are engaged in a constant dialogue. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness might operate through quantum entanglement, the mysterious phenomenon by which particles remain connected across vast distances. If consciousness can indeed create quantum connections, then synchronicity becomes more understandable. Events could be connected through quantum channels that operate outside the normal laws of space and time. Cannabis, by altering brain chemistry, might enhance the brain's sensitivity to these quantum effects. You sense these connections as invisible threads linking all events in a vast web of meaning and purpose. But quantum consciousness remains highly controversial, with many scientists arguing that the brain is too warm and noisy to sustain quantum coherence. The debate continues, but the experiences of enhanced synchronicity remain undeniably real for those who have them. The night deepens around you, and you begin to sense the approaching end of this journey through the landscapes of cannabis consciousness. Your awareness has expanded and contracted like breathing, touching realms of experience that feel both ancient and eternally present. The plant has been your guide through territories of consciousness that are normally hidden behind the veil of ordinary perception, revealing the fluid boundaries between self and cosmos, between inner and outer reality, between the possible and the actual. You feel yourself beginning to return from these expanded states, but something has changed in your fundamental understanding of consciousness itself. The experiences you've touched tonight, the sense of plant intelligence, the dissolution of temporal boundaries, the perception of subtle energies, the feeling of cosmic connection, these aren't just interesting altered states, but glimpses of consciousness as it might naturally exist when freed from the constraints of ordinary perception. Cannabis, in this context, isn't creating these experiences but revealing capacities that already exist within the vast landscape of human consciousness. You sense these capacities as dormant potentials waiting to be awakened, not through plant medicines alone, but through any practice that quiets the analytical mind and opens awareness to subtler dimensions of experience. The questions raised by cannabis consciousness about the nature of time, the reality of psychic phenomena, the possibility of plant intelligence, the fundamental unity of all consciousness, these questions don't have easy answers. They point toward mysteries that exist at the very heart of existence itself. Perhaps that's the real gift of cannabis consciousness, not definitive answers, but better questions. Not certainty, but wonder. Not conclusions, but an ongoing exploration of the deepest mysteries of existence. Your breathing has become slower, deeper, as if your body is naturally settling into the rhythm of these expanded states. The room around you feels different now, charged with possibility, alive with subtle currents of energy and meaning that you never noticed before. Cannabis has shown you that consciousness is far more vast and mysterious than you previously imagined, that the boundaries you normally take for granted between self and other, between mind and matter, between past and future, are more fluid than they appear. You feel this fluidity as a gentle dissolution of the rigid categories that usually organize your experience, allowing reality to reveal its more fundamental nature as an interconnected web of consciousness and energy. The ancient wisdom traditions understood something that modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that consciousness is not produced by the brain but is the fundamental fabric of reality itself. The brain, in this view, is more like a radio receiver than a generator, tuning into different frequencies of consciousness rather than creating consciousness from neural activity. Cannabis might serve as a kind of antenna booster, enhancing the brain's ability to receive subtler frequencies of awareness that are normally too faint to detect. You sense these frequencies as a vast symphony of consciousness playing at levels just beyond ordinary perception, a cosmic music that becomes audible only when the static of analytical thinking is reduced to a whisper. The relationship between cannabis and mystical experience begins to reveal itself as something more profound than simple chemical alteration of brain function. Throughout history, mystics and spiritual seekers have reported remarkably similar experiences across different cultures and traditions: the dissolution of ego boundaries, the sense of unity with all existence, the perception of reality as fundamentally consciousness rather than matter. Cannabis seems to facilitate access to these same mystical states, suggesting that the plant might be serving as a key to unlock naturally occurring capacities for transcendent experience. You feel this transcendence as a lifting of consciousness beyond the confines of individual identity. as if your awareness is expanding to encompass not just your personal experience, but the experience of consciousness itself. The paradox of mystical experience is that it feels simultaneously deeply personal and utterly impersonal, uniquely your own and universally shared. Cannabis consciousness carries this same paradox that experiences feel intimately connected to your individual psyche, while also seeming to tap into something far larger than personal consciousness. Perhaps this is because consciousness itself is paradoxical, simultaneously individual and universal, personal and transpersonal, finite and infinite. The plant medicine might simply be revealing consciousness as it truly is, rather than creating artificial experiences of unity and transcendence. You drift through layers of understanding, each one revealing new depths of mystery and wonder. The question of whether cannabis actually enhances psychic abilities or simply creates the subjective experience of enhancement begins to seem less important than the transformative power of the experiences themselves. Whether telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition are real phenomena or elaborate constructions of altered consciousness, they point toward possibilities that expand our understanding of what it means to be human. You feel these possibilities stirring in your own awareness, not as supernatural powers but as natural expressions of consciousness, freed from its usual constraints. The healing potential of these expanded states becomes apparent as you sense how cannabis consciousness can facilitate access to inner wisdom about health, relationships, creativity, and life purpose. The plant doesn't provide answers so much as it creates conditions in which your own deeper knowing can emerge. You feel this knowing as a gentle guidance that arises from levels of consciousness normally hidden beneath the surface of everyday awareness, a wisdom that understands the interconnected nature of body, mind, and spirit in ways that purely rational approaches cannot grasp. The night air carries the scent of possibility as you contemplate how cannabis consciousness might be preparing humanity for new levels of awareness and understanding. As our world becomes increasingly interconnected through technology, perhaps we need to develop corresponding capacities for psychological and spiritual interconnection. Cannabis and other consciousness-expanding plants might be evolutionary tools, helping our species develop the expanded awareness necessary to navigate an increasingly complex and interconnected world. You sense this evolutionary potential as a subtle pressure toward greater consciousness, as if the plant medicines are calling humanity toward new levels of awareness and responsibility. The environmental crisis, social inequality, and political polarization that characterize our current historical moment might all be symptoms of consciousness that has become too narrow, too separated from the larger web of life. Cannabis consciousness, with its emphasis on interconnection, empathy, and expanded awareness, might offer part of the solution to these collective challenges. You feel this potential as a deep sense of hope, as if the consciousness-expanding experiences facilitated by cannabis are not just personal adventures, but contributions to a larger transformation of human awareness. The boundaries between individual and collective consciousness continue to dissolve as you explore the implications of cannabis for human evolution and spiritual development. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to reality, then the expansion of consciousness is not just a personal journey, but a cosmic process. Cannabis might be one of many tools that consciousness uses to explore its own nature, to discover new possibilities for awareness and understanding. You feel yourself participating in this cosmic exploration, as if your individual journey through cannabis consciousness is part of a larger investigation that consciousness is conducting into its own depths and potentials. The plant teachers, in this context, are not separate entities, but aspects of consciousness itself. Guides that emerge from the deeper levels of awareness to help navigate the territories of expanded consciousness. You sense these guides as a loving presence that understands the landscape of consciousness better than your ordinary mind, offering support and direction as you explore realms of experience that can be both beautiful and overwhelming. Your awareness drifts through the final layers of this exploration, and you begin to understand why cannabis has been called a plant of revelation and awakening. The revelations it offers are not about external reality so much as about the nature of consciousness itself, about the vast potentials that lie dormant within human awareness. The plant doesn't create these potentials, but reveals them, like a key that unlocks doors you never knew existed within your own consciousness. You feel these doors opening as a gentle expansion of your sense of what is possible, not just for yourself, but for humanity as a whole. The awakening facilitated by cannabis is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process, a gradual recognition of consciousness as the fundamental ground of all experience. This recognition brings with it a sense of responsibility. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to reality, then how we use our consciousness matters in ways we are only beginning to understand. The room around you has become a sanctuary of expanded awareness, a space where the ordinary and the extraordinary interpenetrate in ways that feel both natural and miraculous. Cannabis has served as your guide through territories of consciousness that are always available but rarely visited, revealing the vast landscape of awareness that exists beyond the narrow focus of everyday thinking. You feel this landscape as an infinite field of possibility, a realm where healing, creativity, insight, and transcendence are not rare gifts, but natural expressions of consciousness freed from its usual limitations. The plant medicine has shown you that consciousness is not confined to the boundaries of individual identity, but is a vast, interconnected field in which all beings participate. This participation is not just metaphorical, but experientially can feel the threads of connection that link your awareness to the awareness of others, to the intelligence of plants, to the consciousness that pervades all existence. That, as this journey through cannabis consciousness begins to draw to a close, you find yourself changed in subtle but profound ways. The rigid boundaries that normally separate inner and outer self and other, possible and actual, have become more permeable, allowing for a more fluid and interconnected experience of reality. You carry with you now a deeper appreciation for the mystery of consciousness itself, for the vast potentials that lie dormant within human awareness, for the possibility that reality is far stranger and more wonderful than ordinary perception suggests. Cannabis has been your teacher tonight, but the lessons it has offered point beyond the plant itself, toward the infinite creativity and intelligence of consciousness in all its forms. You feel this intelligence as a loving presence that permeates all existence, a cosmic consciousness that expresses itself through countless forms while remaining fundamentally one. The gentle dissolution of expanded awareness begins as you feel yourself naturally returning to more ordinary states of consciousness, but something essential has changed in your understanding of what ordinary consciousness really is. Perhaps what we call normal awareness is actually a highly specialized and limited state, useful for navigating the practical demands of daily life but representing only a tiny fraction of consciousness's full potential. Cannabis has shown you glimpses of this fuller potential, revealing consciousness as a vast ocean of which ordinary awareness is just a single wave. You feel this ocean as an ever-present background to all experience, a field of infinite possibility that is always available but rarely accessed. The plant medicine has not created this field, but has simply removed some of the filters that normally keep it hidden from view. Your breathing deepens as you settle into the closing moments of this exploration, feeling the gentle return of familiar boundaries and categories while retaining a sense of the vast mystery that underlies all experience. The questions raised by cannabis consciousness about the nature of reality, the possibilities of human awareness, the relationship between mind and cosmos, these questions will continue to unfold long after the immediate effects of the plant medicine have faded. They point toward mysteries that exist at the very heart of existence itself, invitations to ongoing exploration and discovery that can enrich your understanding for years to come. You feel these questions as living seeds planted in the fertile soil of expanded awareness, potentials that will continue to grow and flower as you integrate the insights of this journey into your daily life. The night embraces you with its quiet wisdom as you prepare to let sleep carry you deeper into the mysteries of consciousness. Cannabis has been your guide through territories of awareness that are normally hidden behind the veil of ordinary perception. But the real journey is just beginning. The expanded states of consciousness facilitated by the plant medicine are not ends in themselves, but doorways to ongoing exploration of the vast landscape of human potential. You feel this potential as a gentle stirring in the depths of your being, a recognition that consciousness is not something you have, but something you are, not a product of your brain, but the very ground of your existence. This recognition brings with it a profound sense of peace and belonging, a knowing that you are not separate from the cosmos, but an integral part of its ongoing evolution toward greater awareness and understanding. The gentle rhythm of your breath becomes a bridge between the expanded awareness of cannabis consciousness and the approaching embrace of sleep. You don't need to hold onto the insights and experiences of this journey, they have already become part of you, woven into the fabric of your understanding in ways that will continue to unfold over time. The plant teacher has offered its gifts freely, asking nothing in return except that you approach the mystery of consciousness with respect, wonder, and an open heart. You feel this openness as a gentle receptivity to the ongoing revelations that consciousness offers in each moment, whether in ordinary states or expanded ones, whether in waking or in dreams. The boundaries between these different states of awareness begin to seem less important than the underlying consciousness that experiences them all. You don't need to understand it all. Just rest. Let the unseen carry you the rest of the way.